interesting parts of qualitative research. When you have participants from different backgrounds or perspectives, it's natural for their views to sometimes conflict. The key is not to see these contradictions as problems to be solved, but as opportunities to deepen your understanding of the complexities of of the phenomenon you're studying. Rather than looking for one version of the truth, try to understand the context behind every perspective. What, why might program implementers think that the program is effective? And why might beneficiaries feel it has had no impact? Understanding the reasons behind these contradictions can give you a richer, more nuanced understanding of the phenomenon. For example, the implementers might be focusing on quantitative indicators like attendance or completion rates, while the beneficiaries may be focused on personal qualitative outcomes such as emotional impact or practical use of the program. So once we have our transcripts or raw data in hand, we often feel overwhelmed by the volume of information. So without a clear goal or strategy for analysis, we may spend too much time on, on irrelevant details that don't help answer our research questions. So it's crucial that we consistently revisit our research questions, create a clear analysis plan, focus on the most relevant data, set boundaries, and remain reflective throughout the process. But how do we do it? Without some form of systematic process, the problems outlined easily arise when analyzing qualitative data. So qualitative data analysis can keep us organized and focused and can give us a general process to follow when analyzing qualitative data. Qualitative data analysis, or QDA, is all about working through the data in a back and forth way, like a conversation between you, the researcher, and the information. So it is an ongoing process of reviewing, reflecting, and interpreting what people have shared in interviews or group discussions. You start by reading through the data, thinking about what it means, and then going back to dig deeper. So this back and forth or iteration helps you to fully understand the story that the data is telling you. By repeating this process, you get a more nuanced and rich interpretation of what's really going on in the data. So all throughout the process of doing the QDA, you must be clear with your objectives. Do you want to describe a phenomenon in some or greater detail? Do you want to explore the conditions on which the existing differences are based? Or do you want to develop a theory of the phenomenon under study from the analysis of empirical material? So, whatever our aims are in the process of conducting qualitative data analysis, we have to give great emphasis on how our study participants create realities about the issues under study, how their world is determined by the way they see it, and how they function within it. First up, we have thematic analysis. In it is an example of a qualitative data analysis technique. So imagine you're reading a bunch of personal stories or interviews, and you are trying to find common themes like how many people talk about feeling stressed about exams, or how often students mention having support from friends. So thematic analyses help you identify these recurring ideas or themes in the data. Next, we have narrative analysis. This one is all about understanding the story behind what someone shares. Let's say you interview a student about their journey in high school, what challenges they've faced, how they've grown, or the major turning points in their life. Narrative analysis can help you focus on the structure of the story itself. What's the plot? Who are the key characters? It's less about finding themes and more about understanding how the story unfolds over time. And last but not the least, we have discourse analysis. And this method focuses on how people use language in different contexts and how language shapes the way we think and interact with the world. It is not just about what people say, but how they say it and what it tells us about society, power, or relationships. So those are some of the qualitative data analysis techniques that you can use. Before beginning the process of filtering and sorting the data, the researcher must become familiar first with their variety and diversity of materials gathered. Even if the researcher own, even if the researcher does not collect the data, it must um, form feeling first about key issues and emergent themes in the data by considering the context. So in the familiarization stage, the researcher is not only gaining an overview of the rich depth and diversity of the collected data, but also he starts the process of abstraction and conceptualization. While reviewing the material, you are expected to make notes, record the range of responses to questions posed by the researchers themselves, jot down frequent themes and issues which emerge as important to the study participants themselves. A research memo, also known as analytical or reflective memo, is an integral part of the qualitative research process and is part of the familiarization process. In the early stages of the research process, memos can help you articulate your initial impressions and tentative propositions about the data. And as your study progresses, memoing facilitates constant comparisons, wherein new data is continuously compared with previous data and existing interpretations. So, this iterative process helps researchers identify patterns, formulate theoretical concepts, and build a coherent analytical narrative. So, what should be included in a research memo? First is the date and identifier. Each memo should have a date and an identifier, such as a title or code or file name, to facilitate easy retrieval, like a subject line, helps organize emails. The identifier often refers to the specific data source or theme that the memo pertains to. Second, the summary of data. The memo should include a brief summary of the relevant data, and this provides context for your own reflections and interpretations. Third is the reflections and interpretations. So the main body of the memo consists of your reflections and interpretations of the data. This might include initial impressions, emerging patterns, tentative propositions, theoretical insights, or questions for further exploration. You are encouraged to write freely and openly without worrying too much about style or coherence at this stage. Fourth are the connections to other memos or data. So if the reflections in a memo relate to or contradict reflections in another memo or data source, like interviews or focus group discussions, this should be noted. This helps you in identifying connections and discrepancies and facilitates constant comparison process. And lastly, the next steps or the memo might include a note on the next steps. This could be potential plans for further data collection, the areas for deeper analysis, or the strategies for validating the interpretation. So after the memo, we now proceed to coding. Coding in a qualitative data analysis is like sorting through a big pile of notes and tagging them with labels to identify key ideas or patterns. So when you read through your interviews, stories, or discussions, you code the data by highlighting important words or phrases and assigning them a code or label. This can help you organize the data and find meaning so you can easily spot recurring trends or themes later on. So think of it like organizing a messy closet by grouping similar items together. So when you think about codes and themes, we can associate them with building blocks. So each building block is a code, and a code is some more specific than the themes. It can be a word or short